Hey everybody, this is Leo with Track My Visa Now. Today we're going to be replaying about 15 months worth of USCIS processing history and taking a look at what insights we can gain from it together. Before we get started, this is a backlog chart, very similar to the top chart on our public page, except that in this chart, cases are grouped by the week they were received instead of the month they were received. So you get a little bit more granularity and precision. Just to make sure there's no ambiguity, this week, for example, represents all of the cases that were received by USCIS between December 18 and December 24. Now, let's go ahead and get started. So you'll notice right here we have our current date. And so this is pretty much showing a snapshot of what this backlog looked like at that date. And of course, with every working day, USCIS is getting more and more cases, and they're adding them to the end of the backlog. Pretty soon, we're going to see USCIS activity starting to come into the picture as they start working on these November cases. And that should happen just about now. Perfect, there we go. So let's go ahead and pause. So right now, we're in the middle of April 2024. And we see that USCIS is actively working on cases from early to middle, getting towards the end of November. And you can see that that would mean that these folks who just heard back right now, they were waiting for about 5.5 months at the best, maybe a little bit more, right? Some of these people haven't heard back yet, right? So they might wait for 6.5 months, etc. But as we keep playing, you're going to notice that USCIS, they are advancing extremely rapidly through this backlog. I mean, just take a look at that. We played the video for a few more weeks on this side, but we have seen USCIS advance all the way through by multiple months already. They were just at November. Now they're already, in the middle of February. And you'll see that speed sustained for a little bit longer, but definitely not for the entire year, unfortunately. Right now we're seeing a phenomenon that's happened a few times a year, maybe 2 to 3 times a year. It's quite rare, but here we have our first instance of a skipped range that happened in 2024. So you'll notice that USCIS has made significant activity and progress on all of these bars, but has left this one untouched. And so if we were able to zoom in on a daily version of this backlog, we would see specifically that cases that were received between February 23rd and March 6th were skipped, and they didn't end up hearing back until about 3 to 3.5 months later compared to everyone around them. So let's see that as we keep playing history. But before we do, I want to take a moment to just call out. Remember a few moments ago, we were processing cases from November, but it was already April, right? 5.5 months. Look at this now. We have some cases here that are being approved, and there's barely 4.5 weeks worth of data in front of them in the backlog. So the best case scenario for people has been drastically reduced. But at the same time, you can see that USCIS in a way is overextending themselves. They've pushed the front of the line, to a term that we like to use here at Track My Visa Now. It's pretty much the bleeding edge, the front edge of their processing range. They've pushed that frontier all the way up to here, but there's clearly a lot of cases left behind. So they moved forward through the backlog faster, at a rate that they're not able to really sustain without leaving more and more cases behind. So, and of course, that's not even referencing the skip range that happened. There's a second skip range that happened. It was much smaller. It was March 14 to March 20th. You can't see it as well here, but if we were able to zoom in on daily, you would definitely see it. And that was only about 1 month compared to all the adjacent cases. So definitely not as bad as this one. Now, as we keep playing, we'll see that there's a bit of a reversal here. USCIS is starting to slow down, absolutely slowing down this frontier. It's barely moving forward. They're focusing more so on the cases that they already started. But even with that said, their activity is still a lot lower than at the start. So their total processing throughput has gone down. Now, as we keep playing forward through time here, we'll see that they do a pretty good job finishing out the rest of these cases as they're slowly moving forward, and they start to hit a much more sustainable cadence, but unfortunately at a much slower rate. And right about now, we just missed it. They just started to finally go through these late February, early March skipped range dates. And unfortunately, right as they're doing that, they're going to be soon starting a new skipped range. And we see it developing right here. This new range, unfortunately, is for cases that were filed between June 28 and July 11th. And you can see they're just being left behind once again. So let's take a look at where we are here, right? The backlog has grown tremendously. It's arguably larger than it was when USCIS was processing the November cases. So we started with about 5.5 months, we were saying, right? Went down to a best case scenario of 5-6 weeks, right? Of course, with a much wider variance, because some people heard back in 5-6 weeks, but it still took quite a while for USCIS to follow through on all these date ranges that they started. And now we're once again starting to look at that longer wait time. At this point, USCIS is moving forward much more consistently, following through on any date range that they started on. They're following through with it within a few weeks and getting down to 75, 80, even 90% process within just a few weeks of having started a specific week. That is what we like to see. It makes it much more predictable and a lot more fair, because you're not having some people all the way over here get approved before some people all the way over here, like we were seeing earlier. And of course, skipped range, still haven't heard back. They've been waiting about 3 months at this point, a little bit more than 3 months compared to all the adjacent weeks around them. And they're still, we just started to see a few, trickling of cases over the last week or two, really hoping we would see that continue forward. But so far we haven't seen anything substantial. Not like we did over here, where when they started, they really got started and things moved pretty quickly. So at this point, you can see with this new steady, slower pace that they have, backlogs are going to increase. And if you filed over here in January, you can only imagine it's going to take a while for USCIS to crawl their way all the way over to here. And don't forget, at some point, they are going to go back to this skipped range. So, these people are still in line in a way. And we're going to have to kind of eat that cost at some point down the road before we continue to make more forward progress. So I'm going to play this one more time just so you guys can take a look back, enjoy it, pause it at your own accord, and draw your own conclusions. Without further ado, hope you guys enjoyed it.